Hello. I've been asked repeatedly to feature one of my favorite cruisers in the game, and that is of course the Hindenburg. Now I don't mind featuring this ship at all, since I still enjoy this ship a lot. I think it's very fun to play. Now, the map is Tears of the Desert, or as I affectionately like to call it, Tears of the Cruisers, because it's a horrible cruiser map. Very little cover, the only cover is around the bases, makes for very passive long-range type of battles, and these are the kind of things that most cruisers really don't do that well at, exception of course Zhao, I guess, or well, Henry and Moskva also do somewhat okay on this map. Minotaur, Smoke, once again, Des Moines suffers the most out of them all. Des Moines really hates this map. And the Hindenburg, of course, I run with the reload mod, which is not optimal for a map like this because, well, I don't have range and I have to get so very close to get the range. Makes it quite awkward on maps like this. But I do prefer running the reload mod because being able to pump out these shells every 8.8 seconds is so much fun in my opinion. And if I play reload mod Hindenburg, then I might as well be playing, well, Zhao, Henry instead, because that's kind of serves the same purpose. So I prefer the reload mod. Oh, hello, Mr. Neptune. And now, the Hindenburg hasn't really changed much. It's still the same. I mean, there's some new contenders, but the Royal Navy cruisers, if you do spot them, you can wreck them extremely hard. So, because your AP, which hits very hard but has weak pen, is of course especially suited against punishing their broadsides. The new French cruisers, once again, yes, they can HE spam you from range, but once again, they are not very armored, so they don't really change how you play either. As for German battleships who have been in the game for a long time, well, you can't really citadel battleships anyway. Well, you can if you get really close, but most of the time you're going to be spamming AP, so there's really, once again, not much has changed there. On the other hand, German battleships actually have a lot of superstructure, which makes them really good targets for your AP. So ultimately, the Hindenburg is kind of exactly where it was before. Now, it has been buffed a bit. The bow has been changed from 25mm to 27mm, but this doesn't really change anything at all. This change, I mean, what it does, it means that 380mm guns can no longer overmatch you, which is of course the Bismarck and the Tirpitz, but or of the ships you will face. But Bismarck and Tirpitz aren't even threats to begin with. They never really counted as threats for the Hindenburg. So as a buff, it really doesn't matter much at all. It has almost no impact on your gameplay. If you're worried about me grounding, I'm not, because I'm in cover and I actually like my positioning here. I don't mind bumping into this island to juke the shells. I could easily turn away at any point and flee if I wanted to, but this position is one of the safest ones actually, since I'm angled against their battleships and I do have fairly good firing arcs. There was a Neptune spotted here. Oh, you see a smoke? Wonder if he's still like, if I was the Neptune, I'd spark close to the island so I could get into cover. And these kind of shots are, well, if I wasn't me, if someone did this to me, I'd be pretty damn angry. Because, well, that's a double citadel and that's a blind kill. How did I know the Neptune was there? Well, he goes, "You jammish sod" in chat. He's not very impressed. How did I know he was there? Well, first of all, experience. If you play a Royal Navy cruiser, you want to put yourself into a position where you can shoot at the enemy ships, but you also want to put yourself into a position where you can quickly get back into cover if you get radar, torped, whatever. So I guessed that he would park himself very close to the island. And using this guess and using the island to estimate how far I need to shoot, I was able to put my crosshair on what was probably exactly his citadel, and I was able to delete that Neptune in that smoke with multiple hits, including 2 citadels. So those kind of shots are extremely rare, because shooting smoked up cruisers is fairly easy if you get a spotter plane and they're actively shooting, so they're giving away their position. But someone who isn't shooting and is just parked there, sitting still, completely unspotted, killing him is, well, let's just say that's not something I commonly do either. So I was quite pleased with that shot in general. Now, while I've been harassing the midline here, the enemy team has actually been pushing up our flank pretty actively. You can see a whole horde of ships pushing up. Now, if there's something all cruisers are really good at, it's dealing with ships that push towards you. This is something they are all exceptionally good at. Well, Minotaur somewhat of a different example, because, well, you only got a certain time you can deal with the pushing ships. If they reach your smoke and you have to flee in the open, then you're extremely vulnerable. But kiting ships is something the rest of these are very good at, including the Hindenburg. Now, so I switched to HE, even though at this point I could probably do some decent AP damage, but that's because I want to start fires on all of them. You see, North Carolina already damaged on my first fire, so that means that North Carolina is going to be a priority target. I shot at the Friedrich der Große in between to see if I could get a fire on him as well, but I'm switching back to the North Carolina now. I want to use the cover given to me though, the cover given by the smoke and the island. You see I'm parking here, stopping here. Whenever you can use cover, you should. There's absolutely no reason to sail in the open unless you're absolutely forced to do it. In a battleship it's different, you want to be attracting the fire, you want to be tanking a bit, but in a cruiser, no dude. You are not meant for tanking. Some of them tank better than others, but if you are ever forced to be the main tank, then either your team's battleships are positioned wrong, or your own ship is positioned wrong because you are in such a role. Sometimes you're forced to do it, that's okay. Sometimes you might even voluntarily do it, that's fine. But in general, you want to avoid the situations as much as possible. Already got one fire burning on this guy, and I'm of course trying to get additional fires, because as we know, he already used his repair. And that's something that all cruisers, this kind of switching of targets, and always prioritize the one battleship that has used his repair, and always try to aim at the parts that are not yet set on fire. In this case I'm aiming for the very front of the ship, because I have a fire on the back of his ship, and I keep kiting away. One of the strengths of the Hindenburg is the great firing angles. You see how sharply I'm angled? If you look at the bottom left, you can see my angle I'm sailing away at. You can sail away this sharply, but still bring all your guns to bear, and that's a significant strength that this ship has. At this point though, I switched to the Missouri because he's getting a bit too heavy hits on me. I instantly start 2 fires on him. That's perfect. I expect him to be repairing them. While he no doubt is repairing that, I switched to the next target already. Let's check back. Has Missouri already repaired my damage? Popping my first heal actually at this point, and Missouri has damage con. That's perfectly fine by me, because now I know who's going to be my next target after this Friedrich der Große. Starting some fires on him. You don't need to be shooting the same target. What you want is, optimally, if you're fighting multiple battleships like this, you want 2 fires burning on every battleship. That's the optimal situation. 1 fire is not quite enough. You can easily get a second fire, but once you have 2 fires burning, getting a third fire requires a lot of luck, because usually the 2 fires you get are on the superstructure, and trying to hit the bow or the stern and get a fire there, that requires a lot of luck. So I usually don't bother trying to set any more than 2 fires on each ship. And at this point, whenever the Missouri shows himself, I shoot him. When he doesn't show himself, I shoot the Friedrich der Große. The North Carolina is already so low, and he's not really in a position to threaten me. And that's a second fire on the Friedrich. That's perfectly fine by me. He is turning to shoot. I angle away from him. Missouri pops up again. Let's see if we can get some fires going on this guy now. Like, the damage numbers might not look that special, but this constant rain of DPM and this constant starting of fires leads to a lot of additional damage being dealt out. In fact, I've dealt 124,000 damage at this point, and well, part of that is of course the Neptune, but most of it is just from these battleships, slowly melting them apart as I'm kiting away from them. And of course the Taiho and the rest of the ships are helping me, but this is something all cruisers are great at: kiting and fleeing and dealing damage while doing it. Angling to tank as much of the damage as I can, and I switch back to firing upon the Missouri. At this point I see his guns is turned away. This is important. If you notice guns are turned away, that's when you can usually do your turns. You either want to wait for the battleship to fire before you turn, or you wait for his guns to be pointed the other way, and that's when you can use the moment to push in. At this point it's only 1 battleship left, so I'm no longer worried about pushing in and taking the fight to him. But fighting against 3 battleships, as I did earlier, you want to be kiting in those situations. You don't want to be pushing in like a madman. He is giving full broadside though, and that's when I switch from HE to AP, because full broadside, the Hindenburg AP is extremely potent at punishing. That was a 4k volley, that was only a 3k. I'm having some issues hitting him because he's dodging the torpedoes and turning. Let's see if this is a better example. There was the 8.5k volley, and you see the numbers go up. You can easily hit 10k volleys like consistently, every volley 10k, 10k, 10k. You can get some extreme ones that are higher, but especially Yamatos, for example, are often caught off guard when they give you broadside and you start pumping out 10k volleys on them non-stop. It tends to really mess with them because they don't really expect the damage coming from you, and suddenly they see, especially if AR has kicked in, they see themselves losing 10k volleys over and over and over again. Here's of course one of my dislikes with this map, these huge open distances. We did a lot of fighting at our base, but the rest of the fight is going on at the enemy base, so instead of boring you with basically me sailing in a straight line, numb from sheer boredom, I'm just going to speed it up a bit until we actually get to the action again, which is a 4 step ahead. They actually only have 2 ships left at this point, and it looks like the carrier is going for the Amagi? He might be going for the Amagi next to me. I am focus firing a couple of these planes, but I don't have the AFT in this build. At least I'm like 99% certain I don't have an AFT, so I don't really have the gun range to shoot down these planes efficiently. The Hindenburg anti-air is quite strong though. It's not to be underestimated, but it's not that good at protecting others because of the limited range. It is, however, extremely good at protecting yourself, as this carrier who tries to drop me finds out when I pop defensive AA. His planes quickly melt. And in general, you don't want to be striking a Hindenburg that runs defensive AA. And that's of course why I run defensive AA on the ship. Even though you have access to the great German Hydro, I don't want to be struck out by carriers. I want to be able to defend myself. And with the way the meta has been changing lately, you rarely find situations where you can just happily push in with Hydro in the Hinden. Zhao is giving me a lot of broadside, gonna see if I can punish him. Now, the Hindenburg has never been one of the strongest cruisers. It's still not really that strong of a cruiser. In fact, when it comes to playmaking ability, I'd say there's many cruisers that are far better than it. But I've always found the ship fun. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. It's good at fighting almost everything, but it's not exceptionally good at fighting any of them. It's got good shell velocity and flat arcs, which is good for killing DDs, good for punishing cruisers, but it doesn't really have any radar to hunt them down. It doesn't have any massive penetration like US ships to punish cruisers. So it's decent at everything, but not really a hugely great at any of them. Of course, if Zhao does give you broadside like that, you can easily punish it. And that should be him dead, and now I can just focus on the Taiho instead. I could use HE at this point, but honestly I'm not too worried. There's 2 fighter squads from our Taiho near me, so it's unlikely he'll be able to strike me that freely. And the Taiho, if he gives this much broadside, should be eating a decent chunk of AP damage, as long as I hit his side and not his armored deck. I'm gonna see if I could get a few fires on him, just in case, because it's another 50 seconds until my defensive AA comes up. When I get close, I'll switch to AP though. But just a fire or 2 would be nice. Not having too much luck with these fires right now. Still no luck with the fires. The Hindenburg doesn't have too high of a fire chance per shell, but usually it makes it up for it by having 12 guns and a very quick reload, especially with the reload mode and AR like I do. In fact, you can see my reload is, what is it actually now? AR has kicked in significantly. Let's see, next volley, 7.9 second reload on these guns. The default one is 8.8, that's of course AR kicking in. And now he's in range that my AP does huge damage to him, including citadels and such. My defensive AA is already up, so I'm not really afraid of this strike at all. But as is common with tiers of the cruisers, aka tiers of the desert, and especially standard battle, the game ends with time running out, and I doubt I'll be able to kill this guy because he's smartly enough turning in and angling against me, which means of course since I have no fires on him and nothing he's gonna easily survive. There's nothing I can do about it. No secret method. Torps on the ship are good, but sadly only 6 km range. I will not have time to use them, and the game quite quickly ends. Well, quite quickly and quite quickly can be argued. Ultimately though, a pretty good Hindenburg game considering the map we are playing on. On smaller, tighter maps I wouldn't consider this score that special, but getting it on Tears of the Desert is pretty satisfying, especially running reload mod, which is not really a suitable playground for the Hindenburg at all. 222k damage, a nice chunk of credits. I did top the scoreboard, which is of course always satisfying, and well, moving on to the damage done. Considering how much HE I shot this game, I still did more damage with AP than I did with HE, and that of course shows you how skewed the Hindenburg is in favor of AP damage. I mean 88 hits with AP did more damage than 216 with HE. It shows you just how massive the difference is. So whenever possible, do use AP, but most of the time, especially against battleships, it turns out HE is a very, very valid choice. I haven't really changed my build, but I can still give you a quick overview of it since it's been some time since I last covered this ship. Starting off, we of course have the modules, not much to discuss here. Consumable wise, premium repair and premium heal, and I prefer running defensive AA for sure. I mean, you can run Hydra, but it does leave you at risk for carrier strikes, and especially as long as this current mission is going on, especially on EU, where the current mission involves playing carriers, you're going to be facing a lot of them. So Hydra is a possibility simply because of how strong this German Hydra is, but you use it at your own risk, and it's not something I can straight up endorse because there's that risk of being struck by a carrier. I do prefer running the catapult fighter because of course cruiser catapult fighters last for absolutely ages, and it can give you so much spotting information. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, AA range. Without the AA range, the range is so pitiful. With this you at least reach 5.4 and 6 km on your 2 long range auras. Reload mod of course. Damage control because you don't really lose rudder or engine. Rudder shift, I mean steering gears, aka rudder shift, you need this badly because your rudder shift is actually among the worst of all tier 10 cruisers. You really need this rudder shift module. And of course concealment, because well, your concealment isn't much to cheer about either. Captain perks wise, priority number 1 is preventive maintenance. Well, actually no, priority number 1 is priority target, sorry. Scratch that. Priority target, absolutely number 1. I got into the DD mindset for a second there. Priority target as the first one, followed by adrenaline rush for that increased reload, followed by superintendent for additional heal, followed by concealment expert. Once you have concealment expert, increase your fire chance. Once you have fire chance, increase your torpedo detection once again, because we are not running Hydra with this build, so you don't want to get caught off guard by them. The idea of this build is that the Hindenburg is already a jack of all trades, and the idea behind my build has always been to make it better at this. This makes it better at being a jack of all trades ship. And faster repair. So you don't get too vulnerable to the fires. The Hindenburg has a lot of HP, 52k, so fires do deal a surprising amount of sheer pure damage, and being able to repair them more often is quite welcome. And finally, preventive maintenance. You don't want your turrets or torpedo tubes to be knocked out. This is a build I've been running for quite some time on the Hindenburg, and I have honestly enjoyed it a lot. It's very consistent, very trustworthy, I would say. It won't really let you down in any way. You have defensive tools against pretty much everything if you run defensive AA, that is. There's no real ship that is particularly threatening to you. You have your tools against battleships, you have your tools against DDs, you have your additional heal, you have your concealment, you have faster repair if someone HE spams you. It's literally a jack of all trades type of build, and I've enjoyed it a lot. And of course, the lower HP you go, the more adrenaline rush kicks in, which makes this already fearsome damage this ship has even more impressive. So still keeping to the same build and still been enjoying it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my commentary. I'll talk to you guys next time.